everybody, we made it! 3 streams this week. Huzzah! Huzzah! I had such ambitious plans for today, but then I stayed up too late for Halloween. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to hit the ground running. It's going to be great. But then this morning I was like so tired. And also the Agatha breakdown, I don't know if you saw what time it went up, but I was up, it went up at around 5:30 in the morning. And so I went to sleep like at 6 a.m. on Halloween. And so I was walking around doing my Halloween stuff with only about 3 hours of sleep, 3.5 hours of sleep. Thank you, Paul. And thank you, Ryan. I saw you gift some memberships at the beginning of the stream before I went live. And so I was walking around yesterday with like 3.5 hours of sleep. I think also because when I went to sleep, I got really nervous. Thank you, Dancing Dog 60. I got really scared about not being able to fall asleep. I was like, oh no, I'm not going to have any sleep for Halloween. This is a nightmare. What did I do? And so I was not able to abide by my no sugar drink rule. I had like an IV of soda, and that's how I was able to stay awake. And it worked. In fact, again, as you know, I stayed awake too long yesterday. And so I think the back-to-back late night coverage with first the Marvel Disney Plus trailer and then the finale was just really tough. But anyway, I think maybe it's fine. I'm still going to do the coverage for Agatha, a little additional coverage. But I think a lot of people haven't watched the finale, which I'm surprised about. I think that some people, we thought it would be great to release it close to Halloween, but I think a lot of people got distracted with Halloween activities. So I think people are going to be watching it all the way through the weekend. It trends every time, Ben 10. We're going to talk about Agatha on Movie Math on Sunday, but with week 3, it totally fell out of the top 10, even on the originals chart. It's totally absent from Nielsen at this point, just like The Acolyte was. So people are talking about it, but people, unfortunately, maybe, I'm not sure, because, it trends on United States trends. So, I don't know, it's depressing that it doesn't have bigger viewership. I thought it was a phenomenal ending. I wish Jack Schaefer would stop talking about all the cooler things that she wanted to do, though. She's like, you know what I almost did? And we're like, stop it, you're making us feel bad. We like the ending. Hey, Caliban. I think most of us do. But yeah, so lots of stuff coming up. And I'm glad I was able to do 3 live streams this week. That was really important to me. Because, it's holiday row, my friend. Thanksgiving's coming up, then Christmas. We have a whirlwind of fun ahead of us. I can't wait. But I do have, so that Agatha content will come early next week. And also, I'm starting, there's just so much content, which it's hard for you to watch all of it, and it's hard for me to cover all of it. So I'm trying to do a balancing act. Sometimes I feel a little like a deer in the headlights when I miss one deadline. Like a deadline I make for myself. I'm like, oh no, where am I going to fit it? And so I kind of have to recalibrate. Yeah, see, Dancing Dog 60 hasn't watched Agatha. Don't spoil it. Don't spoil Agatha. I saw an interesting headline. I'm interested how many people wanted to see the origin of Rio and Agatha's relationship. I do think that was a missed opportunity. And I saw some people saying they would like to revisit that, maybe with a special. But again, the viewership is so low, I don't know if that would ever happen. Hey, Gabriel. Oh, thank you, Jerry. You guys are so generous. Wow, thank you so much. All right, let's get going. We're going to talk about the 3 stories of the day. And then, of course, at the end of the stream, you may ask me anything that you would like. All right. Story number 1. This is the stream of shocking stories. They're not that shocking. Some of them are. But I think it's fun to kind of have like a theme, right? So it's like, that's today's theme. What? Oh my God. All right. That's right. Home Alone face stories, Paul. That's funny. All right. So story number 1. Boop. Oh, this one's pretty interesting. Game of Thrones. Zazzy's like, give it to me. So Game of Thrones, we have a lot to discuss here. Woo! So many things, so many questions. So it was announced yesterday that Warner Brothers is, they're thinking about it. They're thinking of making a Game of Thrones movie for theaters. They haven't written a script. They haven't hired anybody to work on it, but it's a glimmer in their eye. And this is, of course, I think the first thing I want to say is it's part of Hollywood's IP wars. What kind of IP do I have? How can I run it into the ground? That seems to be the discussion that they have these days. Nicholas says, don't worry, we're not going to talk about Agatha anymore. Agatha's not being covered in today's stream. All right. If you haven't binged it by Monday, don't watch my spoiler video about it when it comes out early next week. All right, so Hollywood IP wars. Again, find your IP, your brand, do stuff with it. And, it's really all about studio synergy. And Disney is the one that really pioneered this model, as you can see. Now, what's the model? Well, you want to be able to do movies. You want to do streaming shows about it, experiences, which not only is theme parks, but also they're starting to get more aggressive with experiences that go on tour. That, like, for instance, right now in New York, you could do the Squid Game experience, and you can do the Nightmare Before Christmas walkthrough, like a light trail. And I've done both of them. And I got to tell you, they're both phenomenal experiences. So there's a lot of money in live experiences. Netflix is even building some temporary ones in abandoned department stores from post-pandemic. They're going to be opening those next year, a couple of them across the country. So it's no longer just theme parks, but there are multiple opportunities for you to do interactions. Then there's also, of course, merch and stuff like that. Now, Warner Brothers is already doing this with the Batman, right? It's not only a movie, but it's a show called The Penguin, although nobody's watching that apparently either. And then Dune. They had an activation at New York Comic Con. I wasn't able to go. They invited. I feel so bad. I really want to cover Dune Prophecy, but I couldn't make it to the New York Comic Con interaction because it was like at the last minute. It was a last minute invite. And then they were like, do you want to come to the premiere? We're going to have costumes, and it's at the Jazz at Lincoln Center. It's going to be really amazing. And I was like, I'd love to go. But, Agatha All Along is dropping that night. And so I got to be able to cover that. So I think, I'm curious to see how Dune Prophecy does. I think I'm worried, you got to IP the right way. That's the other thing. It's so crowded. How do you make sure that people watch your IP? We're talking about a Marvel and a DC show, Agatha and the Penguin, and neither one of them can even make it onto the Nielsen charts. Forget the overall chart. Neither one of them can make it onto the to the originals or the acquired chart. And the bar is really low in terms of what it takes to make it onto those charts. So that's really shocking to me. So I think there's to some degree, like a little bit too much content as well. But, by the way, Game of Thrones House of the Dragon doesn't have that problem. For all the complaints, House of the Dragon still performed extremely well on Nielsen. All right, now, we've talked about making a Game of Thrones movie before, and they've released a couple of the episodes in theaters. They're like, come and watch an episode in IMAX. It looks good on a big screen because HBO does movie quality content. And they have. But I think after Game of Thrones, what was it, season 8, right? Everybody was like, this brand is dead. You killed it. Benioff and Weiss, we'll never let you forget it, and we never have. However, the House of the Dragon came along and did the unthinkable and actually redeemed the brand. And everybody was like, wait a minute, this is still good. And so everybody was very excited and having a great time. But then, here comes House of the Dragon season 2. Which also made everybody upset yet again. They didn't even have, it's not like they had 7 seasons. They had just 1. And then they found themselves in season 8 territory. So I think that's very frustrating. So I think if they talked about a Game of Thrones movie after season 1 of House of the Dragon, I think everybody would be more into it. I'll do a poll. I know you guys like a poll. Poll. Do you want a Game of Thrones movie in theaters? Give it to me. Give it to me now. Let's see here. Depends on the quality. That's a big thing, obviously. Give it to me now. Depends on the quality. I think this is a bad idea. And then the last one will be heck no. All right. By the way, even if you're not a member, anyone can vote in a poll. All right, so we'll continue to discuss. All right, so I think, again, I don't know if people really want to do this anymore. I saw someone say Aegon's Quest. Usman Hussein said Aegon's Quest. Maybe, but wouldn't you want that as a show rather than a movie? I mean, maybe. And who would be Aegon? I mean, I know people have fan cast Henry Cavill, but he's having a rough time. Hey, Lucas Barbosa, I like your picture there. I saw Zeke also. Hey, Zeke, welcome back. Let's see. All right. Then don't forget they have another show, another spin-off coming out called A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is Dunk and Egg, which comes out next year. And then as for season 3, well, they said they were fast-tracking it. Most recently, Matt Smith was giving an interview for a different project that he's working on, and he said he hasn't heard anything about season 3. No one's talked to him about it. He hasn't heard anything. He hasn't seen a single page of a script. So that seems to me like it's very far away. So that's a little bit, troubling. And I just think, Game of Thrones Game of Thrones is a really special experience, but I think it's because of the quality, the scope, and it was Sunday nights. Game of Thrones is a Sunday night situation. I don't really know how it would work as a movie. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I do want to say, I think the biggest problem for Game of Thrones as a brand, and this has continued, I think, from Game of Thrones to House of the Dragon, is that and this is a problem for many franchises, which we've been discussing, lack of delivering on promises. Even George R.R. Martin is guilty of this when he says, I'm going to write this after I write this. And you're like, you're never writing anything, George, except for strongly worded blog posts. So I think audiences are getting really wise to these empty promises. Before we were like, let's just keep watching because the thing we really want to happen and the whole reason we're watching in the first place is for this to happen. But yet it never happens. So we're like I know so many people are thinking the Batman is going to show up on the Penguin show, even though all the reviewers have said he does not show up. And I felt really bad because somebody was making a joke about, next week Batman I bet shows up. He's never going to show up on that show. And I'm not even spoiling it because the people who made the show made that announcement before the Penguin started airing because they didn't want you to be disappointed. And yet somehow people still are, right? Maybe they should air it as a disclaimer before each episode starts and be like, just so you remember, Batman is not on this show. He's not going to show up. Same with Wanda. You're right, I don't care, Bear. They were like, everybody was telling everybody, Wanda's not going to show up on Agatha all along. Everybody was like, where is Wanda? Wanda is not here. Why, Wanda? What happened? Mika says Andrew Garfield ruined it. Because everybody now thinks everybody's just, wink, not, saying they're not going to be there, but they are. I don't know. It's interesting. All right. So I think that is a big problem. Now, here's the question. How do you do theaters versus HBO? Okay. One issue is runtime. I think it's going to be really hard to tell a story that feels as compelling as the usual Game of Thrones stories if you even just have 3 hours, you'd have to I think to even get close to making people feel they got something that was satisfying, it would have to be around a 3-hour movie. But, that's not the 6 to 8 to maybe sometimes 10 hours that you would get for a season of Game of Thrones. So I think that would be really difficult to handle. Maybe you could do multiple movies that would come out in close succession like Kevin Costner tried to do with Horizon. Maybe he just had the wrong, again, he did it with a Western. But maybe if you get the right IP, you can do it a little bit closer. Aubrey and I were on the same page there with Horizon. So maybe you could do it, but I think it would have to be almost like a season that somehow played in, just like Kevin Costner wanted to do. You take 2 or 3 episodes, you turn them into a movie, and then you release them a couple of months apart. What did Dory say? Dory says maybe they can put a man holding a bat in the Penguin. That's funny, Dory. They're like, yeah, Batman, or Batman fan. No. All right. So anyway. And then also epic aspects. Now, the whole reason that Game of Thrones is so successful, or one of the reasons, there are obviously multiple reasons, but one of the big ones is that it has movie-level action sequences in VFX on a show. And it was one of the first to do that. These days, a lot of people do that. That's right, Tenerife. It's all about the dragons, which is why they did a House of the Dragon. Dragons everywhere for the prequel. That's why they chose to focus on that. But, you really, I think, how would you possibly top the cool sequences on the show? And then how do you go back to the show once people have then had the taste of the movie sequences? I think that it's, I really wouldn't want to mess with the, this being, I think it's extremely successful, and I don't think it leaves anything on the table as a streaming show. So I think that there's only a potential for danger to do a movie version of it, to be honest with you. I don't think this is it. I think I would do everything but the movie thing in this. I'd take out the movies, but I could do Game of Thrones experiences. I don't think they do enough Game of Thrones experiences. And many of us would like that. We're like, where's the Game of Thrones theme park experience? Choose the Bear says, so now you can questions and comments on this topic. So Choose the Bear says, I think they should make an open world type video game for Game of Thrones. Oh, that's a great idea, where you can choose which house you represent. I love you too, Choose the Bear. That's a great idea. Wow, look at that, amazing. Again, the internet gives such amazing ideas to these companies for free. And they're so dismissive of the internet. They're like, oh, the internet's so awful. You're like, man, sift through this because there's some real gems in here. Like, that is a fantastic, phenomenal idea. I love that. I'm not even sure which house I would fight in. But I'm excited. It's like Harry Potter. You're like, oh, do you have a quiz for me to take? Let's see here. Thank you, David Chambers. Let's see here. Let's see here. Although Josh loves movies, thinks it's a good idea for, well, Josh, you love movies, so no wonder. Marlon Wallace says HBO should stay in its lane, especially because some of their recent shows have not been hitting. That's a great comment, Marlon. And by the way, it said in this coverage that HBO was against this idea, but, David Zazzy says, deal with it in classic Zazzy fashion. Yeah, I think it's not a good idea. Danny says a Song of Ice and Fire universe is amazing. Do you mean like a game or just the game in general? And I do agree with Shahar. Just finish the damn books. It's like they're never going to end. Adam Sphere, I didn't skip your super chat, but you must have asked it too early. I told you if you ask a super chat too early, it's hard for me to get back to it. Let's see. Paul Brunel says, how do you strike the balance between a movie for new fans to bring in more money while also doing something for... Is there anyone who's not a fan of Game of Thrones, right? I mean, no one's going to be like, wow, this show's been on for decades, but maybe I should get into it now. Wandering Cess says, does the film work like season 9 and features Dany resurrection? Oh, well, yes. If Dany's coming back, I will be there. I don't care. Did I thank Paul for his very generous gift? I think I did, but thank you, Paul. That's right, Dancing Dog 60. It would have been nice if there had been dragons in Horizon. Angela, happy Friday to you as well. Let's see here. Chicken Beach says, I love that name. You don't watch Game of Thrones because it's too violent and icky? Oh, you're missing some great stuff. I got to tell you. It's really phenomenal. You should try it. Manpreet, there's no idea what the movie would be about. Warner Brothers doesn't even know. They're just thinking of doing it. Oh, Adam Sphere says, my super chat was just asking for Balerion the Black Dread. I don't know her. I guess I'll have to Google it. I don't read the books. Don't read books. There's no picture. I feel like Gaston. How do you read this? There's no pictures in here. I only read comic books. Thank you very much. HRCC. Hey, HRCC. Thanks for joining. Let me close the poll. The Night Howler, that's an interesting question about rating. Would it be R or PG-13? I think it would have to be R. Game of Thrones fans would be appalled. Let's see here. So 42% of you are open to it, depending on the quality. 19% of you want it now. You're just excited about the idea. 18% of you aren't so sure. And then another 18% are sure that it's a bad idea. But that's close to a little over 60% who are positive. So that's pretty good, actually. I mean, I guess why not, right? All right. Oh, Doc Hay says Balerion was the biggest, baddest dragon. I don't know. What's the name of, see, I'm not watching the show and the names are so hard to remember. What's the name of that super big old dragon that, Patch rides? Hey, you over there with the silken locks and the patch. Vagar, that's right. Yeah, Vagar. Vagar's too big. It's like a 747 flying through the air. I'm just like, that dragon is so old. Every time I see that dragon, I'm like, I feel like crust would be falling off of it. It probably has little candies in its pocket. Let's see here. Gravo says, hi from Atlanta. I'm so appreciative of your Agatha All Along coverage. Thanks, Gramos. I'm so glad you've enjoyed it. I really enjoyed doing it. That's right. It has back problems. I mean, every time I see it, that's what I think. Like, I don't like that dragon. It's just such a total bitch, too. I'm like, it's so mean. I just really don't like it. So yeah. So I think, yeah, all the stereotypes. That's what I think of as soon as I see Vagar. I'm like, Vagar, that's you. So yeah. So I think I wouldn't want to go any bigger than that. I think I would like a sports car dragon that can, do the tight turns and do some good stuff. That's what I'm into. Thanks, David. That's a good one. But yeah, that's what I think literally every time I see. I think Vagar has a hard time getting off the ground. Like, it's really weird. All right. What kind of a sports car dragon? I like the lean and mean ones. They can do hairpin turns. They're still in it to win it. So that's what I'm looking for. That's what I feel like. That'd be a funny sketch. Like if you go to get a dragon, select a dragon, and it's like going to a car lot, and there's like a dragon salesman. And they're like, what are you looking for? Or I can put you in this kind of dragon today. And you'd be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Let me see what we got. All right, let's take it. And you do, this would be such a funny sketch. It makes me miss doing comedy sketches. And then also you'd be, like you do the test drive, but yet the salesman has to go with you so you don't steal the dragon. I just think that would be really great. Okay, what kind of mileage does this dragon get? Or how much does it eat? It's just great. That's right. I don't care, Bear. That's why you have a writer's room. Dragon financing is brilliant. That's so good. I love that. And even the name, even the name of it, Dragon financing. I'm sorry. You don't qualify. So you're not going to be able to take that one. Hi, Danny. Thanks for gifting that membership. All right. That's right, Vitor. I'd have to lease the dragon. I have to return the dragon after a couple of years. All right, now since we're all revved up, let's truly spill the tea with a truly trashy story. Boop, sad boop. Okay. Patty Jenkins. Somebody sent me this story the other day, and my literal reaction was sad. I actually tweeted that back. I said, that's sad. Okay, so let's talk about what's going on here. Boopity boop, boop, boop. Oh, Patty. Girl, you in danger. She's been in danger for a long time now. The fact that somebody would not help themselves is crazy. You're like, are you still friends with the murderer? And they're like, yeah, he's okay. We get along. All right. Is it you, Zeke? Oh, thank you, Zeke. All right, so Lego headline. So it's been announced. Hold on so you can see it. Woo! The Legos. They're going to do 3 movies. I'm not sure if they're going to be connected or if they're competing or what. But there's 3 movies in development. And why is this happening? This is happening because the Lego movies have moved. Let's look at the Lego box office. The Lego movies have moved from Warner Brothers to Universal. So these are the movies that have come out so far. Okay, where's my arrow? All right, so look at all this crap messing up the chart. What is this junk? Why is it in here? What the heck, the numbers? This chart is hideous. All right, so, but I didn't have time to make a new one. All right, so I only do that for movie math. All right. So the Lego movie, the first one, did extremely well. As you can see, made almost $470 million worldwide. But then the Lego Batman movie, not as good, but close, $310, very funny. Although they took a little bit too many liberties with Batman toward the end. But the first half of it was very funny. I'll never forget Robin. Michael Cera as Robin was fantastic. Then the Lego Ninjago movie, that was rough. That was like for really little kids. So as an adult, you were sitting there being like, what did I do? What did I do to myself for buying this ticket? And then the Lego Movie 2, oh man, look at that. From 470 to 190. Oh my God, that's so bad. All right, so Legos were like, we're going to go and try our hand over here at Universal. And Universal, of course, as you can see, already does, they call it live action Legos, but it looks like, it's like animated Lion King versus CGI animated Lion King. So, but although with the Lego stuff, it's always CGI animated. Oh, and I wanted to say, by the way, Piece by Piece just came out, and this movie is a total just a disaster box office wise. It's only made $9 million domestic and hasn't even been released overseas. So I don't know if there's a lot of interest in Lego content right now, but Universal's going to try. And they have a lot of success with their Illumination movies, obviously. Despicable Me 4, very successful once again. Although I think those movies are getting so lazy. They're like, plot? What are you talking about? And then DreamWorks Animation, obviously, has also been doing quite well. With Kung Fu Panda and hopefully an upcoming Shrek movie. And also Super Mario was also from Illumination, by the way. So, and maybe Lego feels if things work out with Universal, they could try and do something in the theme parks, right? So I think, again, IP, synergy, and all that. Although Lego has its own theme parks, obviously, but they skew a little young. So they're like, all right, let's try and make some movies. So they actually hired 3 directors. And we'll talk about Patty and Jeff last. So Jake Kasdan's going to be doing one of them. He's really working with Dwayne Johnson almost exclusively these days. He directs the Jumanji movie. He's directing the upcoming Red 1, which will play in theaters before going to Prime Video. And then there's Joe Cornish, who did Attack of the Block over 10 years ago and really hasn't been able to do anything since. But they're going to do the other movies. So they're all working on these films, and they're going to see which ones, I guess, move forward. And then Patty Jenkins and Geoff Johns. So when one of you, I guess it was Zeke, tweeted me the other day, and you said, look at this announcement. Not only is Patty Jenkins making a Lego movie, but Geoff Johns is working on it with her, and he's the writer. And I was just shocked to see that. And I wrote back, that's sad, because it's like for Patty Jenkins to continue to work with someone who is not only someone who is responsible for killing her own career, but so many people's careers. Like, she's bringing other people into contact with Geoff Johns, who is extremely dangerous. I mean, I think that's a little bit too aggressive a word. I think anyone's career, it would be a bad move to work with Geoff Johns. Like, if you're wondering what happened to DC, you're looking at it. All right, so we'll talk about him next. But first, I just want to talk about Patty Jenkins. Patty Jenkins, I don't know what's going on with her. It's really sad. She did a very good job with the first Wonder Woman movie. She apparently had quite an assist from Zack Snyder, which she's not been, I think, aware of, and she kicked him off her second film and his team, which is why I think it didn't turn out as well. But, it did so poorly that she lost her Star Wars movie, which she still insists she's making, even though Star Wars is also, like, we don't know her. And it's just like, it's very delusional. It's like, we're seeing, I guess social media is the culprit, but we're seeing more and more talent become like unhinged. I guess before only their agents and managers had to hear this garbage. But now they like to go to social media and announce it to everyone else. And everyone's like, what? Everyone's like, we're not even in Hollywood and we know that's stupid and not happening. So it's really, really weird. I wish that they had better publicists who are like, take their account away from them. And be like, don't tweet, it's bad, and everybody remembers it. So Patty Jenkins really has nothing going on except, I guess, this Lego movie, which she for some reason decided to loop Geoff Johns into. And we were all like, I don't think anybody was worrying what Geoff Johns was up to because he's such a horrible person. But here he is. He stayed alive by infecting Patty Jenkins. I guess that's the other thing that kind of bothers me about it. He's like a Joss Whedon level problem to some degree, if not worse, because Joss Whedon only ruined his own career. But, he should be gone, but he's still in Hollywood because Patty Jenkins has let him glom onto her. All right, so let's talk about Geoff Johns, because people have a short memory. I was interested to see, even in politics, people are bringing up clips and things that happened a long time ago because newer voters don't know or remember it. But anyway, I think a parasite, Blair, is like a very good comparison. So Geoff Johns, anybody who how we talk about the DC curse, which is still seemingly alive and well. For a long time there, as long as Geoff Johns was at DC, he was responsible for the ending of so many people's careers. Not only in the movie section, but also in the comic book space. And when I was covering that stuff, and I was covering it as everything fell apart, I had so many people DMing me and reaching out to me privately who said Geoff Johns ruined their careers. Like point blank, they told me that. And that was really shocking to hear. I really don't want to, get into too many details, okay? But he's just, let's just put it, he's a very, very aggressive person. And he also not very trustworthy, let's say he apparently stabs a lot of people in the back. Let's just walk you down memory lane for some of the things that are public, right? He was responsible for getting rid of, he was the one, let's put it in good terms. He was the one who wanted to go with Joss Whedon. He said, hey, Joss Whedon's available for Justice League. I think we should go with that. That was his idea. And he really undercut Zack Snyder. And there were, there's some, like, if you ever hear like the personal details of it, it's just what he did to Zack Snyder was really, really bad. So that's really bad. Then you might recall that Walter Hamada was the one who decided to make that fateful call, right? To say, please, can you not, with Ray Fisher, Walter Hamada reached out on behalf of Geoff Johns. If only Geoff Johns, had the guts to make that call himself. But instead, he went and he planted a bug in Walter Hamada's ear, and he said, would you take care of this for me? And Walter Hamada did it, and it ended Walter Hamada's career, which I think was unfair because I think Walter Hamada had really good ideas as an executive, and he came over from the horror space at Warner Brothers where he'd done a wonderful job. Ray Fisher has recounted his own horrible interactions with Geoff Johns. So I just think it's really, really a bad situation. And I think that because people have a short memory, he was allowed to be hired by Universal. I'm really surprised that no one at Universal wasn't like, when Patty said, I'd like to bring on Geoff Johns, I'm surprised that the people at Universal weren't like, well, I'm sorry, then we can't work with you. And I probably wouldn't work with her, because even if she said, okay, well, I won't work with Geoff, I'd be scared that she would be sending Geoff the scripts secretly, and then she would be like, surprise, he co-wrote this, and you have to give him writing credit. And then I'd be stuck with Geoff Johns. And that's the kind of stuff that he does. And by the way, he has a very good, strong history as a writer. Oh, by the way, yeah, that's the other thing that he did. He was a huge writer, and as the head of DC Films and TV, he was exclusively pushing his own stories so that he would get the rights and he would get the payoffs and the royalties, and also that he would have more ownership of DC in general, because he was only pushing his own stories. He wasn't pushing the stories that were best for the character and for the film and TV space. He was like, I want you to adapt my story, his stories, because of that situation. So it's just really, really bad. Geoff Johns is only out for Geoff Johns. He doesn't want to help Patty Jenkins' career. He doesn't care about Lego. He just wants to keep himself working. And so the fact that nobody remembers that, and that Universal and Lego hired him, is just really, really shocking. And so I'm just surprised. So, Adam Sphere, you just have to decide whether or not you trust me, because I'm not going to go and say things that have not been proven. And I mean, I don't want to get into that kind of an argument. I mean, I'm telling you. And I think there's a long line of people that would say that, and that's the other thing. You don't have to take just my word for it. You have a line of people out the door, like a trail of bodies. Oh, Phil said he admitted that he was deliberately greenlighting his own stories to Kevin Smith. He even admitted it. So it's just really bad. All right, so does anybody have questions or comments about this? Dancing Dog 60, I think that Patty Jenkins, I'm not sure what their relationship is and why she feels good about him. Thanks, Blair Wraith. I appreciate that. I bet you the Patty Jenkins movie never gets made for Lego. I would not be surprised. Danny, I don't think that Geoff Johns was ever working with James Gunn. He was fired long before James Gunn came on. Corey, there is no discussion as to what any of these Lego movies are about. Shahar, you didn't like the Ninjago movie either, even as a Ninjago fan? That's pretty bad. Mika points out that maybe Geoff Johns is the only person who was still her friend after Wonder Woman 1984. You know what I think the issue was with Wonder Woman 1984? Patty Jenkins refused to admit, I think even to herself, that she messed up. I think Patty Jenkins, if you asked her to this day, she would be like, sometimes people call it revisionist history, which I find frustrating. That's not true. That's like, someone said that the other day about my saying that I wouldn't recommend I wouldn't tell you have to watch the Marvels, but I enjoyed it. Someone's like, oh no, that's not true. You were saying it was the greatest movie. First of all, I didn't say it was the greatest movie ever made. I just didn't trash it. And I said I thought it was a fun, cute movie. But, obviously once you see the box office and the damage something does, when you look back at it, I think a sophisticated person is someone who's able to pivot. Pivoting is an important skill. And I don't think Patty needs to fall on her sword. And I don't think, by the way, she never should have gotten rid of Wonder Woman's sword. That was a huge mistake. But yeah, Brett Crandall, your enthusiasm is so adorable. Yay, live stream. Yes, hello. But yeah, so, that's, thank you, Scorus. That's a nice way to put it, that I look at things objectively, not just from my own perspective. I really do. And so, that's what I would say. And I wish that Patty Jenkins had that ability. I wish she would be like, there's nothing wrong with Patty Jenkins being like, I enjoyed Wonder Woman 1984. I thought it was fun. I totally see what people were saying about the Steve Trevor stuff, and I didn't think it was going to play out that way. I thought that dude was dead. I was like, oh, it's a take on Heaven Can Wait. Not that they were going to borrow his body. I can't believe nobody brought up that was a bad idea. But yeah. And then Wonder Woman sees him later and is like, hey, you. And you're like, oh, my God. Zeke says, why can't Patty make the movies like Monster that got her career started? I think she wants to play in the... I think it's understandable. That's a great question. But I think it's understandable that Patty Jenkins feels she made Wonder Woman, which was a very successful film. She wants to play in the big leagues. But so she's trying to, I think, stay in that sandbox, which is understandable. But she also needs to understand that Wonder Woman 1984 was such a misfire. And also, she handled it so badly that I think she has to, I think she needs to come up with something maybe potentially for herself. I just can't believe that she's still, it's like, it's so shocking when you talk to someone and you think, okay, we helped them. And then you don't see them for a while, and then they show up and you're talking to them, and just casually out of nowhere, they're like, oh no, I'm still hanging out with that really toxic individual. And you're like, what? Not only are you worried for them, but you're like, oh no, is he here? Is he going to show up? Don't tell him you talked to me, because that's the thing. Like, I thought we were rid of Geoff Johns, and the fact that he's like, no, he might come through the Lego portal is like, and you get kind of annoyed with Patty Jenkins for doing that. You're like, why did you put all of us in danger? I really honestly believe that she's endangering anybody who works on that film. Steven says, I'm surprised Patty wouldn't go back to her indie roots. Again, is what I just said. Thanks, Elise. Somebody just gifted a ton of memberships. We see. That's so generous of you, as usual. Thank you so much. Alberto liked Wonder Woman 1984, too. I think it was a fine movie. I thought it was very moving when she had to say goodbye to Steve Trevor again. Greg says, wouldn't it be interesting if she made her Wonder Woman 3 movie as a Lego movie? That'd be actually kind of funny. That's the only way I would allow it. And even then I'd be like, but ooh, Geoff Johns is still involved. Thanks, Alberto. That's right, J. Jonah Jameson. It really is like somehow Geoff Johns has returned. And I'm just as upset as whatever Oscar Isaac's character's name was. What was his name again? Oh, man, there's too many names to remember. Let's see here. Elpidio says, I like Wonder Woman 1984, but I also haven't had the need to watch it again. That's a good point. I haven't watched it again either. And Adamsphere, you're right. Pedro Pascal was so good in Wonder Woman 1984. Everybody was making fun of him. They didn't know. They didn't know it was coming. Thank you, Poe Dameron. That's right. Thank you, Virgil. All right. Okay, I think we're ready for the next story. This is an interesting one from a business perspective. Okay. Story number 3. Boom, baby. Look at Ridley Scott. For me, Ridley Scott will forever be the guy who, when he made Exodus, and everybody said, Christian Bale and Joel Edgerton are not regionally appropriate for Moses and Pharaoh, Ramses. And Ridley Scott said, I don't care, this is what I'm doing. And just like when Napoleon came out and people were like, Napoleon is wildly historically inaccurate. And he said, I don't care. And then also now everyone's saying that Gladiator is really historically inaccurate. I don't think people care that much about Gladiator. I mean, clearly, the first Gladiator had a real majesty to it, and this is clearly like a blockbuster movie where you're like, they're fighting a rhino. Although I did think the criticism was silly. One historian said, that's the wrong type of rhino. I'm like, are you effing kidding me, man? A rhino's a rhino, close enough. I don't think anybody's going to be I don't see a lot of variation in rhinos. You're not like, oh, it's a totally different. Oh, the newspaper, though, is ridiculous, Mika. That somebody's reading a newspaper and having a coffee, right? That's just ridiculous. That is really stupid. Maybe someone will have a gun in Gladiator 2. They'll be like, yes, it's a Roman gun. You didn't know they had them. And we're all going to be like, whoa. I mean, that's Ridley Scott these days. So I find that really, really hilarious. I mean, I guess if he's going for it, he might as well. But yeah, so this is why it was very interesting to me that he said these comments. I was like, it's just so interesting. So I'm so excited to talk to you about this. That's fun. J. Jonah Jameson, Starbucks cup. That is fantastic. It's a funny joke. It's a shout out to, of course, the Starbucks cup that was in Game of Thrones. I love it. All right. So there was a big Hollywood Reporter interview about all things Ridley Scott. He was basically promoting his production company. So you can read it. It's in the Hollywood Reporter. I believe it came out yesterday. And I was like, ho, 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 Ridley, you're funny. I don't know. It must be very hard for when they do these interviews not to have to add context. They're like, I can't believe he's sitting across from me saying that. So I'm going to add the context. Ha ha! All right, so I'm like, Ridley, little did you know this is a dialogue, not just an interview. All right, so he said that he wants to make a new Alien movie, which I thought was particularly insulting to Fede Alvarez. Fede Alvarez, I think, did a wonderful job with Alien Romulus. I'm surprised everyone's like, it made $350. Wow. I'm like, dude, I'm glad they're continuing. I really, really like the film, and I think that Fede Alvarez did the best Alien movie since the first two. But I think it's really, really funny that people are trying to say 350 is a great number. I'm like, just say that it's an acceptable number and you feel like the franchise is going places. But anyway, in this interview, Ridley Scott said that he gave Fede Alvarez copious notes. And he said at first Fede wouldn't take his notes in the editing room, but then he realized that Ridley Scott knew what he was talking about and the movie was better for Ridley Scott's interference. And I'm like, dude. leave Fede Alvarez alone. Fede Alvarez, it was his idea to do it based off of a video game. I think that's a really speaking of underhanded, I think that's an underhanded thing to do to Fede Alvarez. I really, what happens in the editing room stays in the editing room. They should just be happy that a great film came out of it. So I was just shocked that he said that. And if I were Fede Alvarez, I'd be like, I'm not taking any more of his calls. That was just a really jerky thing to say. And that's right, Nacho Flores, particularly because you're like, oh, really, Ridley? You had the magic notes after House of Gucci, Napoleon, and all the other stuff that you've recently made that's not doing well? Let's take a look at his box office. All right, I was going to do this earlier, but I'm in a moment, but I'm so annoyed. Let's look. I'll be back. Here's Ridley Scott's recent box office. So I went pretty far back, out of respect, all the way to the original Gladiator. All right, that made $451 million 24 years ago, so that's quite a bit of money. So he had a pretty good run. I think the last time he made a really amazing movie was Black Hawk Down, which only got to 159 worldwide. That's interesting. But I think that's the last time Ridley Scott, made The Martian. Also, was 653 in 2015. That was an incredible film. But man, this is a Swiss cheese resume if I ever saw one. You're like, Ridley, that thing's full of holes. And he's like, shut up. Just like when you said, hey, Ridley, why do they all have a British accent in the Middle East? And he's like, shut up. Or you're like, why is Denzel reading a newspaper in ancient Rome? And he's like, shut up. Apparently he gets to fight with people all the time. Oh, thank you, babe. Thank you so much. It's so nice to see you. But yeah, a lot of, and I even kind of enjoyed Napoleon, by the way. But from a producing standpoint, I'm like, I don't want to hear it, Ridley. And then I'll tell you something else he said that was shocking to me. Shocking. I'll just say it now. I'll bring up the quote in a minute. He said he's the one who single-handedly saved the Alien franchise with Prometheus and Covenant. I was like, are you kidding me, Ridley? Seriously? This is some revisionist storytelling. Now, yes, Prometheus, of course, did do a lot to bring interest back, even though people were like, it's not that good, but I enjoyed David. All right, so 402, it was, it certainly did well at the box office, but I don't think anybody thought the movie was a really fantastic film. Then he did Covenant, which dramatically did less money. It went down to 238, and then they didn't make another Alien movie for 7 years. And he honestly is going to tell people that he saved it? I'm like, dude, the chutzpah. All right, thank you, Michael. Look, I watched Prometheus and Alien Covenant again after I watched Romulus because I had such a good time with Romulus, and I watched both. I watched Romulus twice, and I was having such a good time being in the world of Alien, I was like, I'm going to go back and watch the other two movies. And Prometheus holds up a little bit better, but I got to tell you, Covenant is awful. I stopped watching it. That's right, Blair. Sit down, sir. Sit down, sir. You embarrass yourself. That's what, if I had a glove, I'd slap him in the face with it. All right. David was phenomenal. That was a gem. That was the good thing that Ridley Scott created. So let me get a quote about Revive the Franchise. Let me see if I can find it. I screenshotted the interview because I was like, what, Ridley? All right. So, oh yeah, here he is saying he's going to make a new one. So yeah, he's saying, I'm going to make a new Alien movie. And you're like, what now? Why aren't you just getting behind the Fede Alvarez movie? And I'm also, speaking of David, if Ridley Scott is making a new Alien movie, will he want David just for himself? I'm like, no, share your toys. We all want to see Andy and David. Andy versus David. I don't care, as long as they're in the same movie together. The idea that they would not be is very frustrating to me. And, it was a big deal for Fede Alvarez to get an Alien Romulus sequel. Because, again, as I told you, I thought the box office was okay. It just barely made it into being acceptable in terms of, how a franchise should perform. So the fact that now Fede Alvarez has to compete with a actual Ridley Scott Alien movie that's going to come out, I think is not helpful to the brand. So I was really surprised about that. And he announced it himself, though. Maybe he's delusional like Patty Jenkins. Maybe Fox is like, what? No, he's not. Because, that Fox guy gave that interview just the other day that we talked about with Apes and Alien Romulus. He didn't mention no Ridley Scott movie. And maybe Ridley's just developing it on his own. He said it. Maybe when he says for 20th Century Fox, he means he's going to give it to them to see what they think. Hey, Professor Soundwaves. That's a funny name. I like that. So yeah, so let's see what happens, but I'm really shocked. But then the conversation gets even more interesting. How could it possibly get more interesting? Well, we already looked at his box office, so hold on. Then he had an interesting, fascinating comment about ownership. This, to me, made the whole article worth it and why we're talking about it. So, he made a comment about ownership. All right, hold on. I want you to see it in all its glory. All right. So, he said, one sore spot for Scott and his team is their lack of ownership in the Alien and Blade Runner franchises, something the director blames on some of his company's previous management. Scott Free has to re-earn its spot on the team whenever a new sequel or prequel is explored. So maybe that's why he's making some of these comments to argue that's why you need to make sure that he's included. Thanks, Professor Soundwaves. So he says, I should have locked them up, as Spielberg did with Jurassic and everything he does, and as James Cameron has done with what he has, Scott says. I resurrected a dead alien with Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and we should have rejoined the ownership right then, and we didn't because someone was careless. I'm like, who is that, Ridley? Do they still work for you, or are you saying it was someone at Fox? Now, here's what's very interesting. So that's his quote. Now, let's talk about it. Now, first off, ownership is important. Ryan Coogler, of course, demanded ownership of his upcoming movie that he's making with Michael B. Jordan. Although then we all saw the trailer and we're like, I don't see an IP here, Ryan. It might be an amazing movie, but I don't know if I see an IP. But maybe we. I really like Ryan Coogler, so I'm prone to believe what he says. Although right now I'm a little skeptical. Although I think the movie looks great, but I don't know how this is going to power his family for generations. So Ryan Coogler, but I think that's an excellent example of someone demanding ownership over their franchise. And Ryan Coogler demanded that, and that was part of the deal that would have to be offered for him to go with the studio, and Warner Brothers agreed to it. So Ryan Coogler didn't make that mistake. Ryan Coogler wasn't sloppy. Good for him. Now, yes, Alien is owned by Disney now. Disney owns Alien. I'm not quite sure who owns Blade Runner. It might be a production company at this point. But, you know, those movies have historically, the last one I think was a Blade Runner 2049, I think was Warner Brothers. But before this stream, I was like, hold on, let me go and look at the history of how Ridley Scott made Alien and Blade Runner. And here's where it becomes really fascinating and shocking. And you're like, oh, Ridley. Ridley Scott did not come up with either Alien or Blade Runner. He did not produce them. He was not the director that was signed on to direct at first for either one. He was hired to direct these movies. He was a hire. So you don't get ownership of something unless you have some skin in the game and you are the one who takes the gamble. James Cameron has ownership because of, what he did. These are people who produce these things. They're the one who decide to make the movies in the first place. Ridley Scott, risk reward. Ridley Scott takes no risk. Dancing Dog 60 says, Grace, Sir Ridley takes a lot of credit for Alien on what was really the creators Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett, who gave Scott a tremendous script. Totally. I mean, I do think that Ridley Scott has made strong contributions. I don't want to negate what he has added, but he certainly does not have ownership. That's funny. You mentioned Joker 2, The Moon. It's not like Todd Phillips owns Joker. That's a great point. This is as stupid as Todd Phillips being like, I should have locked up Joker ownership. And you're like, that was never on the table. What are you talking about? Ridley Scott cannot own Alien. He cannot own Blade Runner. The only reason that he would ever be included in these projects is because of the name. That the producers and the studios just want to say, hey, Ridley Scott's involved, because that still means something, at least for now, to the general public. Mika, Stallone lost ownership of Rocky. That's not true. Stallone never had ownership of Rocky. Stallone was not successful enough to get Rocky made on his own. And he didn't try to. Stallone could have raised the money himself and produced it himself, but instead, Stallone went to a producer with a script that he'd written. And he said, will you help me get this, will you get this made? And cast me as the lead. which usually would never happen, that you would be the lead if you had no experience. So that was Stallone's reward. And he basically traded the ownership of Rocky to be able to be the lead. And he got an amazing career out of it, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It's not our fault he lost all of it. And that the person who took the risk with the Rocky movie was the producer, who actually, I believe, leveraged his own house so that he could get the movie made. That's true, those of you who are pointing out that J.K. Rowling does own Harry Potter, because she took all the risk. Whoever takes the risk gets the reward. No one is owed something. You know, that's what's really an important point that I think people often forget in business. It's the same thing sometimes with Alan Moore being like, well, why don't I have Watchmen ownership? And Peter David, I believe, at the time had the best response to that. And he said, this was an amazing quote that everybody should remember. You get the best deal that you can at the time. You can't go back and redo deals when you have more power. That's not the way it works. You can't go back. You know, it's a journey. And you sign the best deal that you can at the time. And, you know, Alan Moore couldn't sign a better deal for Watchmen at first when he started out. He just didn't have that ability. And Ridley Scott never had the ability to have this ownership. Okay. Justin says, how do you take ownership of an IP? That's a great question, Justin. If Ridley Scott wanted to take ownership of these IP, how could he potentially do it? Well, it'd be almost impossible to wrestle Alien away from somebody as big as Disney Fox. They'll never sell it. It'll never happen. But you would have to get an IP that somebody needed to sell. And then you would say, I will take it. And I will invest in it. You know, that's how, you know, you'd have to buy it. He'd have to, if he wanted ownership, he'd have to buy it. And he could have maybe gotten ownership back in the day if he'd been willing to put money in there. If he'd been willing to invest his own money. But he didn't. Again, he wasn't willing to take the risk. You know who owns this stuff? The people who paid for it. Just writing it isn't enough. You're the creator. No one can ever take being the creator away from you. But that does not give you ownership. You could try to hold on to ownership, and that way you would just refuse to sign a deal until someone agrees to let you have it. Although nobody would give you full ownership of something if they were paying for it. If they're paying for it, they're going to get partial ownership. You'll never be able to get full ownership. I think the only reason it worked for J.K. Rowling is that nobody, you know, a book I think is different. A book is very different than a movie or a show. That's right, Marco. That's a good way to put it. Copyright is in the hands of the financiers. Unless somehow that's in your deal. But again, nobody would give you the money unless they could have partial ownership because they don't want to invest that kind of time and money into something they're not going to be able to reap the rewards of down the line. It just, you know, you have to look at it. I think a lot of people look at this from like a creator perspective, but that's the wrong way to look at it. You need to look at it from a business perspective because that's how something actually happens in this space. Dancing Dog 60, I think that it's very sad what happened to some early comic book writers for sure. And you should get royalties. Royalties are very, very important. And the fact that streaming is trying to kill royalties is really going to hurt the business. You know, the Hollywood Reporter put out an article today about how much people in Hollywood are paid. And I wish that they had been a little bit more clear that for some of these jobs, you don't work consistently. So sure, you get a really huge payday, but who knows when you'll be working again. And you might only work on one project a year. Although I was impressed how much an editor makes. You know, if you're looking for something to do, you might want to consider becoming an editor. Let's see here. For film and television specifically. All right. Oh, we're a little over. Like, isn't that fun how much stuff we found to talk about today? All right, booyah, Q&A. I can do like 5-minute Q&A. Chosen Loner, I'm glad you like these business talks. So it makes me so happy. I think they're really important. I think they make Hollywood less frustrating if you understand how it works. I mean, if you understand how it works, you're more likely to hold on to your projects. Tony says, hi, Grace, you're going to an early screening of Wicked. No, I'm probably going to get to go to the all-media screening, which should be in the next week or so. I'm excited to cover it, very much so. Although part of my Glinda-esque costume, I'm not doing a full costume, but it didn't work out, so I only have half now. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm freaking out a little bit. I'm glad you watched Scream. That's a great one. I should have watched Scream. I stayed up, part of the reason I stayed up late was I was watching Poltergeist, which hits different when you're older. Sophia says, hey Grace, I didn't realize that Despicable Me 4 grossed $964 million. That's right, Sophia. Those movies just crank out a billy. They crank out a billy every time almost. Justin Russell says, how do you become an editor in film? Well, I think that you would probably have to study editing, and then I think you'd have to become an apprentice for somebody who was an editor in film. And then you would eventually get deals, the ones they couldn't take. But that's how you would make connections. Remember, Hollywood, well, they say Hollywood is a business of relationships, but I feel most businesses are built on relationships. Oh, the Night Owl Hauer says, what's the drama with Fables and the creator? I don't remember exactly, but I think there is. I think, Vertigo. That's what's that's very interesting. Vertigo back in the day would allow people to keep ownership. Writers were able to hold on. Writers and artists held their ownership, even though they were technically working for DC. And that's how Karen Berger, I think, was the name of the woman who ran the Vertigo imprint. And that's how they got such incredible comics there. But eventually, when Warner Brothers purchased DC or took more interest in it, they saw that Vertigo allowed people to keep ownership, and they said, that's dumb. And they stopped that policy, which is why nobody would work with Vertigo anymore, and it eventually folded. So when it was recently announced they were bringing the Vertigo imprint back, I was like, honestly, my immediate reaction was, do people get to keep their ownership? Because then why would anybody go there? You're going to release through Image, which also allows you to keep your ownership. Although Image allows you to keep your ownership because they don't put any money into your comic. Image will print it, and I guess they'll pay for the printing, but they don't pay you a salary. You have to work for free, or if you need to hire an artist, you're responsible for paying that artist. And they also don't really do any advertising. So that all falls on you. Again, risk reward. But I think that Bill Willingham owns Fables because Vertigo gave him that deal back in the day. And I think he's having problems with Warner Brothers, obviously. And so that's why he just stopped, which is sad because it was so good. That's okay, Zeke. I love your enthusiasm, Zeke. Jesus says, hey, Grace, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you for being, that's so sweet of you. Thank you, Jesus. I met Jesus. Jesus couldn't make the first BTT movie club that we did. We'll have another one coming up actually soon. But he was part of the Godzilla private one that we had done. With just the BTT movie club when that was first starting out as a behind the membership wall. John Kamara, I'm not sure when I'm going to review Amelia Perez. I'm not even quite sure when I'm going to see it. Matthew, I love Garrett Dillahunt. I'm glad he was cast in Lanterns, but, he's playing a new character. I don't even know who that really is. Caliban says, I rewatched Joker 2 with a non-angry cinema face. Still bad. Yeah, I forgot to see how it was doing on iTunes. I'm curious as to Apple TV, if anyone's watching it. Let's see. Oh, it's number 6. Nobody even wants to watch it. Let's see here. I don't care, Bear. I haven't heard anything about Harley Quinn season 5. It was supposed to come out in November, right? Maybe they'll just drop it out of nowhere. It's too crowded now. They should wait. They should wait till after the New Year's. Thanks, official Liam G. Oh, Elise, I didn't know that Saw owned the characters. That's phenomenal. Good for her. Adam Sphere, I did not see The Substance. I'm scared to watch it. It seems too gross and gory to me. Stephen says, do you think we'll see more of Jennifer Kale? I'm not sure. Again, the viewership is so low that it makes me nervous. Oh, thank you, Jareem. That's so generous of you. Thank you. And then Deshaun says, I love Wanda and Wiccan, but I'm nervous about the fast power growth to reality warping. Do you think the fans will demand the MCU version of M-Day again? I don't know. You've already gotten M-Day twice, and it was neither day it was M-Day. I think they're getting ready to stop doing multiverse movies. Thank goodness. And I think they should stop. So I don't think they're ever going to do that. Adam Sphere, I did see the Skeleton Crew trailer. I thought it was adorable. I actually liked it. And I thought Jude Law looked pretty sexy as a Jedi. I was like, ooh. but it looks very much like it looks like Stranger Things meets Star Wars, which is, I believe, what they pitched, and that's what they delivered. I think John Watts is a very good director. I really liked most of Wolf's until the end, so I'm excited about it. But I was very tired again this morning. I almost reacted to it, but then I looked at the numbers that everybody did for reacting to the first Skeleton Crew trailer, and I was like, wow, just nobody cares. I'm glad it did well on Twitter. Christopher Alexander, I'm so glad you saw Conclave on my recommendation and you enjoyed it as well. Dream says, do you think Tommy will be found in Vision Quest or a separate spinoff? Oh, I'll tell you next week, although I don't have any actual confirmation. I just have an inkling based on some stuff that I've heard. But again, I'm very nervous considering how low the viewership is. All right, I better get going. Let's see here. Oh, you liked Conclave too, Silver Scale? That makes me very happy. Big Witch says, favorite movie of the year so far? Maybe right now I'm thinking Dune and Conclave. Let's see here. Shahar, I didn't think that it seemed like Tommy was in California. Based on the flashbacks, he looked like to me he was in the South. That's what he looked like to me. Zeke says, Grace, what are your thoughts of the upcoming Scary Movie 6 with the Wayans brothers returning? Apparently Melissa Barrera and Marlon Wayans follow each other on social media. Well, I'll be curious to see what they decide to do. That could be interesting. I like Melissa Barrera. I think she's a good actress. And Sarah, I will watch The Brutalist. I couldn't make their closer screenings that they have, but I have one coming up in November, so I'm going to see it. I'll be seeing it. I'm excited. All right, everybody, happy Friday, and I'll see you on Sunday for the Movie Math. All right, everybody, bye-bye, bye-bye. Oh, thank you, Nicholas. I just saw your quote there. Thank you. Right back to you in Greece. Bye.